Brett Wingeier always dreamed of building things that could change the world. Those dreams led him to biomedical engineering and eventually to co-founding Halo Neuroscience, which is creating products that are breaking new ground in stimulating the brain to become more productive or high-performing. On this episode of IT Visionaries, Brett talks about all the science, research, and development that goes into creating wearable hardware. Plus, he details everything Halo has been working on and what he's most excited about for the future. This podcast is sponsored by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. Salesforce just introduced the Lightning Platform Mobile, the low-code mobile app development platform that empowers anyone to easily build, publish, and manage AI-powered mobile apps for employees and for customers. Find out more at salesforce.com/buildmobileapps.
Welcome to another episode of IT Visionaries. I'm Ian Faison, Chief Content Officer here at Mission.org. And we have on the line, Brett, how's it going?
It's going fantastically, and I'm psyched to be here talking to you, Ian.
I am as well. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode than we normally have. You know, obviously you are a CTO and now co-CEO, which is pretty exciting. And we'll get into that. But what you're building at Halo is something, you know, our listeners might not know a ton about. So before we get into all things Halo, can you share a little bit how you got into technology?
Right. So I came out of academia, and this was quite a long time ago. But let me tell the slightly longer version of the story. And as a kid, I wanted to build stuff, and I knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I got into biomedical engineering and brain science because it was really kind of one of the last frontiers of figuring out just the fundamental principles. How do we make products that help brains work better and things like that? And I got through academia and got lucky enough to be able to, after I got my PhD in electric fields in the brain, biomedical engineering, found a role in medical devices and made brain implants for most of my career, along with my co-founder. We spent that time at a company called NeuroPace, and it took 13 plus years and a couple $100 million. But in fall of 2013, we got FDA approval for a stimulator called the RNS stimulator. And it basically sits in your head and watches for a seizure about to start and then stimulates to try to stop it. Meanwhile, we had been watching a lot of this science grow and grow and grow around ways to do this with wearable products, and that's what brought us to start Halo.
And tell me, what was the impetus for wanting to start Halo? I know, and I'll tease a little bit the fact that I love that this had some roots in our U.S. military. As someone who served in the Army and was in the Army for a long time, I fully appreciate what you were trying to build. But share for the listeners what the impetus was for this.
Yeah. So, what we saw was this amazing time in the science where the neuroscientists all over the world were starting to realize that with electrical fields on the surface of your head, you could really meaningfully change how the brain works and make it work better. Essentially increase neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to optimize itself. But all of this amazing science, and we're talking about back in 2005, 6, 7, through to 2013, all of this amazing science was being done with wires and sponges and beige boxes that sit on your desktop. So when you put your business hat on, what that leaves is a need for that to be baked into a product that people could actually use. And it left us with this really fascinating challenge of building a market around that. But that was the motivation. Is there was great science, and nobody had really put it into anything like a consumer product yet.
Hardware startups are notoriously difficult. They require a lot of money. There's all sorts of different things that are extremely difficult about this. From a technology standpoint, you are someone who's a patent holder. How long did it take to build the tech side of Halo in terms of patents and all of that before you got something that was kind of commercially viable?
Yeah, no, great question. So we absolutely started as a fairly pure R&D organization, and we started the company in fall of 2013. We spent that first year doing more and more research, focusing on the science. We spent the next year of our existence, 2015, focusing on product design. Then we spent the year after that focusing on 2016, focusing on bringing this to mass manufacture. But so much of the journey here has been, again, taking something that, where some of the underlying principles are fairly simple, but making it something that you can put in people's hands and will work wherever and whenever. And talking about IP, I'm glad you asked, because IP is very close to my heart. I'm a patent agent and whatnot. But a lot of our most interesting IP came out of this adventure of figuring out what is really needed to make this something you can put in everybody's hands and it works. Things like ways to monitor the output, ways to monitor what the product is doing, to adapt it, to personalize it, things like that.
Yeah, what were some of those things? I mean, what were some of those insights that you saw that like the market really needed from that adaptability or ways that, that kind of customer centricity? What were the folks that you were talking to? Yeah, what were those things that they needed or didn't know they needed?
Well, so when you're making a wearable product, you talk about hardware startups. Well, the only thing harder than a hardware startup is a hardware startup that's making a product that interacts with the body and has to fit well and has to look well. So a big part of that kind of customer-centric focus is this very concrete challenge of making something that can literally fit on everybody's head without kind of straps and buckles and things like that. And just for your listeners, our first product it's a pair of headphones called Halo Sport that stimulates the part of your brain that's involved in muscle memory, so you get more out of your training. Well, that means it needs to feel good, look good, and get electrodes, we call them primers, to exactly the right point on your head. So anatomical variation is huge. And even for myself, full disclosure, as a bald guy, it probably took me far too long to realize this. People don't just have hair; people have a lot of different types of hair, and you've got to be able to make great contact as well on myself or somebody who has 3-inch dreads, and that's a huge challenge. So a lot of our key IP, it actually came out of that, thinking through how do you make soft primers, electrodes that can make contact through any hair type.
That's fascinating. Isn't it one of those the great idiosyncrasies of startup building that you think that you're going to go into business to work on the human brain, and you ended up knowing more about hair as a bald guy than you ever thought you were going to know?
Yeah, hair types. I've had these moments sitting on the factory floor in Dongguan, China, a factory making ear pads for headphones, and thinking, I did not think this is what a PhD in neuroscience was going to lead me to.
Right. There's a great story about the guys who founded Yeti Coolers. And it was the same sort of thing where they were selling boats, and they were working on trying to build basically just better coolers for the boats that they were doing, like industrial grade. And they were in somewhere in Asia, I forget where it was, in this like plant in the middle of nowhere, trying to figure out how to get like industrial grade coolers. And they're like, how did we end up here? how did I get into this? Is just a crazy thing. But I think it's a really interesting point, because it goes back to this idea of being customer centric. And if you have headphones that rip your hair out, for example, or don't fit correctly to do the job they're going to do, then they don't have any chance. Let alone some of the athletes or operators that you've worked with, in the San Francisco Giants or the U.S. Navy or the U.S. ski team. People like that who need extremely high performance. Was there something that you saw in the like high performance community that was like an obvious fit?
I guess we we've learned a couple really fascinating things. And, first of all, just huge respect from Halo to the military personnel, special operators, elite athletes, everybody who's kind of been on this journey with us, right up to the weekend warriors like you and me. So a couple observations. One is, if you take a high-performing individual and you give them something with a dial on it that goes from 0 to 10, they're going to take that dial and they're going to try to make it go to 11, and they're going to push it on that up button as many times as it takes to try to get it up to 11. So that was, I share that just kind of as a funny thing we notice. Just invariably, when your whole kind of career is a quest for high performance, there's just this great enthusiasm for technologies that help you get there better. But another thing we realized is, one of the key advantages of a performance technology for amazing high performers, it's not necessarily that it gets you to a different place in the end. It's that it lets you get to the same place, perhaps, with more time for recovery. If you're pushing your body to the limits, then the amount that you can train it's not so much limited by the normal factors for the rest of us. It's limited by the fact that your body just has to recover. When we started working with some of the special ops personnel, it was really interesting to learn that they didn't want to spend more time in the gym. They wanted to spend less time in the gym to get the same results, so they could spend time on learning languages and all the things that makes them well-rounded professionals.
Yeah, that makes sense. Was there kind of a moment in time when, in those early folks, where you felt like the technology was kind of working the way that you wanted to work, or where you got feedback from those folks that was particularly insightful?
Yeah. So, I think we saw this partially in feedback and partially in looking at some prototypes that people had just taken and beaten up. And it was another good lesson in what happens to technologies once they get out there in the wild. It's easy to make some prototypes, and you look at it and you're like, wow, there's only 50 of these in the world. This is my baby, and then you give it to somebody who is going to use it as part of their job, which is to reach maximal performance. And it's for them, it's a tool. It's not their baby. It's a tool, and they beat it up in ways that you never would have expected. TJ Carey of the Oakland Raiders, he was one of our.
Oh yeah,
I know.
I don't know TJ, but I'm a Raiders fan, so I love TJ.
Yeah, I mean, a fantastic athlete, fantastic story, and the guy he works like crazy. So he used Halo Sport in his vertical leap training, added quite a few inches. But he brought back the first headset we gave him, and it was just demolished. And it was great to see, how he had used it, but also it was this moment for us of, we can't put metal here. It's gonna corrode away. We need to beef this up. We need to beef that up. All right, we got to go back to the drawing board on a couple things, because people are going to beat these products up because they use them and they're tools.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And someone like that, I remember the Raiders. This is a couple years ago now. They had talked, I was at the facility and I was talking to some of the athletes, John Kondo, their snapper, and he was saying how for the first time they'd really embraced technology as like a team, as like an organization, on how it could impact their day-to-day training. And they started to use just a bunch of different stuff. I think it was when Jack Del Rio became coach. For those of our listeners who are like, what the hell are you talking about? But basically the Raiders, brought in a new coach, and the team with previous regimes just hadn't used technology, and they were just blown away. And you think, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry with performance and technology, seemingly at the cutting edge in certain places, but for some places it wasn't. And to think about someone like TJ taking this, device, giving it a whirl and coming back and it's destroyed. I think it's so emblematic of like the types of testing that needs to happen at, the highest levels of performance.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe this is a tangent here, but the story of the Raiders adopting technology, it's an interesting kind of reminder of just how helpful it is to be really agile about, we should evaluate stuff analytically, but there's I'm thinking of an example from my own experience here. Most of my technical background is in medical devices, which is in a lot of ways it's a really conservative field with the tool chains you use and how software gets written and things like that, and conservative for good reasons, because you're building software that's going to live in a medical implant. But I came into this world of consumer products, and I actually had to get educated by my team a little bit on the world is using GitHub now. I came in and I was using Subversion for version control because I was using tool chains that hadn't changed in a while because of coming from this world of medical devices. So a lot about what we've been doing at Halo is it's trying to merge these worlds of some of the principles that we learned in medical devices with this very fast-paced, user-centric, customer-centric world of consumer products. And at the end of the day, I think that's probably a win for both fields.
I want to talk a little bit about like Halo as a company and your role as CTO and co-CEO. What does innovation look like within the team? How do you look at technology in terms of like employee productivity on like the inside of the organization versus kind of the product building neuroscience that you're doing for your engineering team?
Right. So you asked about things like productivity. Because we try to do so many different things at Halo, and I'm not even going to say try, because we do so many things at Halo, there ends up being, we've got 30 employees, there ends up being about 25 different answers to that. Because we've got, so let me answer that in part by giving a little bit of background on how it breaks down. A lot of what we do is still research. We have 6 just fantastic scientists on board. They're constantly doing research studies with this product and the underlying technology, and that group runs kind of like an academic group with a kind of principal investigator and research associates model. We have all the different flavors of engineering, from mechanical to electrical to firmware. All the engineering side runs pretty darn lean, as does everybody. And on the software side, it's been a interesting part of the journey. We've got a great vice president of software named Mike Shea. We've got a couple really great mobile developers, a great QA person, and there is a lot of I'm going to use the word agility, agile processes, and these very quantitative ways of tracking what has to be done. That was not in our DNA from the start, because we founded the company coming out of medical devices, which has much more of kind of a old school waterfall way of thinking about requirements and whatnot. And fortunately, we've got a great software team that's been thinking about this from the start. Great product thinkers on board, and we've found a way to do a sprint cycle and do agile development in a way that also plays nice with the fact that we're a hardware company, and there's other parts of the puzzle where we have to be thinking 6 months or 2 years even in advance to make sure that we're making the right decisions. Obviously, manufacturing ops is a big part of what we're doing, and they're talking about just keeping track of things. It's not so much keeping track of productivity, but one of the milestones that we reached lately is keeping track of all of the different parts that go into the stuff that we build. It uses this tool called product lifecycle management, the tools arena. There's a step in the evolution of any hardware company where you look at how you do that, and it's all fully baked, and you're like, all right, we're all grown up now, and we reached that a few months ago, and that's just been a fantastic help in keeping track of stuff, especially with our vendors.
So you have, started companies in the past. You've been entrepreneurial in the past. How does this time as like CTO feel different than it might have in your previous roles?
Well, so just to clarify, I wasn't a co-founder at NeuroPace. I was employee number 35, which put me pretty darn early in the process, and I was with them for the long haul, certainly. So this is this is my first rodeo, so to speak, as a
Okay, cool.
as a startup founder. It's been an amazing journey. I mean, obviously, I think one thing that I certainly wouldn't have realized was just how many different things you have to make sure go right in order to build a company or build a product. And
Salesforce just introduced Salesforce Blockchain, the industry's first truly declarative blockchain platform integrated into your CRM. Learn more at salesforce.com/blockchain.
Make a difference in the world and to do something that scales beyond yourself. But certainly coming from science and then engineering and then kind of the regulatory and biostatistics fields and whatnot, none of that really prepares you for looking at a business as a whole and understanding how to allocate your resources and where the money's flowing, frankly. And fortunately, I had my co-founder was NeuroPace's director of business development, and we had worked together for a long time. We were actually climbing buddies for a long time, which if you want to start a company with somebody, there's really no better way to do it than to take somebody that you've seen up at the top of a rock face, cold and tired, and somebody dropped the headlamp, and you at that point you build up some trust, and you know how they're going to react. So, fortunately, we kind of backstopped the stuff, the qualities that we needed in each other, and Halo came out of that. So it's just been an amazing journey.
I want to dive into some of the like R&D in the kind of early days, because I think so much of like startup, especially technology startups and SaaS, is around like immediately shipping to your customers as fast as possible, getting feedback, making sure you're building what people want, trying to find that product market fit and all of that. But for what you were doing, it was so heavy R&D intensive at the beginning. You had to build something first. What were those kind of early days like, developing the technology and starting to build the team around that tech?
Right. Yeah. So it's harder to do some of that testing, but it's something we realized early on is it is very essential. And in some sense, you've got to find a way to figure out what needs to be de-risked and figure out ways to use the tools that you have to de-risk that. So for us, we've got some of this stuff up in a Hall of Fame at our office, actually. At the start of this conversation, I mentioned that a lot of the underlying science was done with wires and sponges and things like that. Well, we built our own beige box, which is certainly easier to build than headphones. And we had sponges strapped onto people's heads, and we did about 1,000 sessions with just volunteer participants trying to understand how to make this work robustly. And then we went out to a lot of the athletes, and we did projects with the U.S. national ski and snowboard team. We did a project at the NFL Combine, San Francisco Giants, and all these guys. They had our little beige box on a waistband, and then a cable up to their head with some headgear that, over the months, it started to look more and more like headphones. And that's how we consolidated some of these earliest learnings here. And then in parallel with that, we were starting the industrial design process to figure out what our headphones were going to look like and things like that. But really, there's you have to be very flexible about how you do it, but there's still no substitute for figuring out what has to be de-risked, what has to be validated with your potential customers, and then just go for it however you can.
What was one of the hardest challenges as a CTO and working with the technology, especially in a field that's so complex, and then convincing your buyers, ultimately making the complex simple without sounding kind of like the snake oil salesman?
Right. So, there might be a couple parts to that answer, but one of the hardest challenges really is largely creating a new market. The market for consumer neurotech is brand new in many ways. And it is very easy to talk about it in a way that it's put it this way, it's easy to talk about it in a way that kind of comes off as being fluffy or is sensationalist. We're stimulating the brain. That's exciting for some people. There's some trepidation there. And it's also a field where, historically, it can be easy to wave your hands and talk about the brain and, make a lot of noise about some kind of technology. So we've always felt the need to be very, very rigorous about how we talk about this technology, to be very clear about what it can and can't do. It moderately increases neuroplasticity. If you use it sitting on the couch, you're just going to get better at sitting on the couch. It's not magic. And then just to keep telling that story in as many authentic ways as we possibly can to our customers. A lot of what we do is just building awareness of the brand, of the technology, of the underlying science, taking every chance to talk about what this is and what it's doing. And then part of that is finding more and more ways to reach out to our customers, even after they've purchased the product. We want them to have a good experience with it. So we follow up with workout guides and more information about the science. And we've had neuroscientists, PhD neuroscientists, MDs working our customer support line, even just trying to make sure that we're accurately getting the message out there.
So right now, Halo is kind of like, as we mentioned, in the hands of elite athletes, in the hands of elite performers. Like you said, it's, if you're sitting on the couch, it'll help you get better at sitting on the couch. But what does, not necessarily Halo specifically, but as part of the broader ecosystem, like what does this industry look like in the future? Like what's the futurist view on cognitive applications?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions because it's so exciting to answer. The brain is everything, and we went with movement first because it let us build headphones, and it's a product that everybody's familiar with. But if you look at the underlying science, there's just amazing data in applications for things like attention and focus, cognition, learning. And then further down the road, let me be clear that this isn't Halo Sport, and these are different brain targets, but things like depression and chronic pain and rehab and physical therapy and things like that. But to speak to the cognitive stuff, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the frontal part of your brain, it's your brain's get your act together center. It deals with cognitive control, being able to focus on what you want to focus on, commit things to memory. And there's an amazing opportunity that's now backed up by good science, showing that you can modulate this part of the brain and really help people focus more and learn things better. And one of the reasons that's exciting is because it kind of comes full circle. A lot of this conversation we've had is about, how have we incorporated technology into what we do at Halo? What are some of the tools and thought processes? Well, a lot of the ways we incorporate technology into our workday or into something complicated like running a company, it boils down to how do you make people more productive? And you make people more productive by giving them tools to help them do what they need to do. Well, in a way, in the future, this technologies that help your brain work better, it's the ultimate productivity tool, and it's the ultimate tool that helps people unlock their potential and get done what they need to get done. So, in that way, it comes full circle, and it's just another really fascinating thing about this whole field.
All right, let's get into some lightning round questions. These questions are fast and easy, just like our good friends at the Lightning platform from Salesforce. You can go to salesforce.com/build mobile apps to learn how to build apps faster and easier on the Lightning platform. Fast and easy questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Number 1, what app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Kindle.
What is your favorite vacation spot?
Hawaii.
Favorite book or podcast that you've read or listened to recently?
I have reread for about the 5th time a book by Mark Halperin called A Winter's Tale. It's my favorite book in the whole world. Go check it out.
What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
Oh, it's got to be barbecue. Give me some ribs, smoker, my backyard, my kids running around. That's money.
What is your best advice for a first-time CTO?
While keeping the dream alive, be a cold, hard realist, because stuff doesn't always turn out the way you expect it will. But if you're prepared for it, then you can make it okay.
What question do you never get asked that I did not ask you today that you wish you were asked more often?
Put it this way. I'm one guy here talking about a project that there's 30 people at Halo right now. There's more that have come in and out over the last few years. And in a conversation like this, I would love questions that let me talk about how awesome every single person on the team is. I'm the co-founder, but it takes a team. There's oceans of conversation to be had on you. How do you build that team? How do you just keep everybody functioning? Because at the end of the day, none of us can do this alone. And I want to give a shout out here to just all the really fantastic people who work at Halo.
Are you hiring any open recs?
We've got a couple. We've got a research lead and a director of product.
Awesome. We'll link those up in the show notes. Brett, this has been awesome. Next time we'll have to dive deep into some of the data and analytics and all that stuff that you're seeing, because I think there's lots more that some of the things that you're working on that we would love to dive deep on. So thanks for coming on the show.
And I can't wait to talk about that. And Ian, this has been a huge pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Salesforce just introduced Salesforce Blockchain, the industry's first truly declarative blockchain platform integrated into your CRM. Learn more at salesforce.com/blockchain.